Hi there, this is Solitaire Ronan from Solitaire Ronan Films, and welcome to another boutique label battle. I haven't had one of these for a wee while, but today the boutique label battle is about Mr. Klein, or Monsieur Klein. This is the Studiocanal Vintage World Cinema Blu-ray, Region B, which came out last year, something like that. And then this is the Criterion Region A Blu-ray, which came out in the last 6 months or so. This is a film by Joseph Losey from 1976, starring Alain Delon. This is arguably my favourite Joseph Losey film. I think it's arguably his best of what I've seen. There is a Joseph Losey season coming on the channel. At some point, I just need to buy a couple more, or try and track down a couple more films. But this is a masterpiece, basically, about events in Paris in 1942, based on real events, as far as the end of the film. Stars Delon as Robert Klein, who is basically a war profiteer. He buys art and artifacts from Jewish people who are trying to leave Paris. So he is, it's interesting because a fairly morally bankrupt character that is supposed to be our hero. And he gets mistaken for another Robert Klein who is a Jew, and he insists he's not a Jew. And slowly the bureaucratic machinery gets oiled up and is convinced that Alain Delon is Jewish. He wants to prove that he's not. He needs to get his grandmother's papers, but they're delayed. He talks to his father, there may be family secrets, and as he gets more and more obsessed with finding his doppelganger, who may or may not exist, he is kind of blind to the impending danger and doom that is quickly approaching. It's an absolutely wonderful film. Losey talks about how he wanted it to be really about three things, or have three aspects. The main thing of how ordinary people will treat other ordinary people. People will turn a blind eye to horrors and atrocities as long as it doesn't affect them. The second aspect was about war profiteering and these people that, you know, horrible things are happening over there, but I might as well make a profit on it. And really, thirdly, about that bureaucratic machinery that can just steamroller people, and once you're in the system, a bit like Gilliam's Brazil, you can never get out of that system unless you take drastic measures. It's a wonderful film. I think I've done a random review on it. And obviously if I do the Joseph Losey series, I'll be talking about it in more depth. But let's talk about the two editions. Again, the Studiocanal was the one I got first, because this was the first time it was in Blu-ray, pretty much, I think. This has a new introduction by director and film critic Jean-Baptiste Thory from 2021. It has Mr. Klein Revisited by film critic Michel Simon, and a new interview with the editor Henri Lenoir. The print is beautiful. I do like that cover art as well. And then we have the Criterion Region A. And with Criterion's, you have a booklet with an essay by Jeanette Vonsondeux, who usually does a little talk on these vintage Studiocanal World Cinemas. She's on a lot of the Jacques Becker films. So she's not on camera on Mr. Klein or the Criterion, but she does do an essay. And apart from anything else, I just like saying Jeanette Vonsondeux. Originally, seeing it not in the flesh, I wasn't a big fan of the artwork on this Criterion, but I do think actually having it in physical, it kind of goes with the film. I mean, we have the kind of shadowy doppelganger here, and the film does have kind of muted, almost Jean-Pierre Melville colours. So I think the artwork sums up the film quite well. So the Criterion has the exact same interviews with Michel Simon and Henri Lenoir, but it has interviews from 1976 with Joseph Losey and Alain Delon. Delon is a little bit older in this. He is a little bit jaded. You do feel he's a bit of an empty character, or an empty human being. There's a couple of scenes where there's a close-up of his face and he's essentially just staring into space, thinking, and Losey just pulls the camera back and Delon kind of just snaps out of it and continues what he's doing. There's especially a scene like that, and it pans back and there's a woman in her underwear in his bed and he's at his desk and he's just kind of just oblivious of, in the background, you know, the room is draped in all this art that he's bought off of Jewish people. You know, that encapsulates an aspect to the film absolutely perfectly. But I digress. But I would say the great extra, but also depressing as hell, is a 1986 documentary on the real life Veldiv roundup from Paris in 1942, where essentially the Vichy French police rounded up 13,000 Jews, men, women and children, and took them on buses, and then took them to, I think it was a local football stadium, and just handed them over to the Germans. And there's interviews with people who were kids at the time, and pretty much that was the last time they saw their mother and stuff like that. So it's a really good extra, but it is really depressing. But it gives real kind of added weight to the goings on in the film, because, you know, as I said, Delon becomes so obsessed with finding his doppelganger that he kind of isn't aware of what was going on. I mean, obviously, when they were all loaded up into buses, and they probably obviously didn't know what the end result of that would be. But it's just so wonderfully done that he's doesn't seem to be that bothered about the fact that they're getting put on buses or ending up in this huge stadium behind barbed wire. That's almost secondary to him, because he needs to find out who this doppelganger is. So all in all, it's a wonderful film. If I had to give the nod in this boutique label battle, I will give it to the Criterion edition, even though the only difference is really the interviews with Losey and Delon, which aren't that long, but they are pretty insightful, and also that 1986 documentary, which is pretty hard to watch, but it gives real weight to the proceedings. But again, that's a Region A. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Region B. The print, both prints look wonderful. There's no particular difference in the prints, so it's just depending on your region or whether you particularly have a fondness for Criterion. But just a wonderful film, an excellent film, with lots of layers and depths that really hold up to re-watches. I mean, I'd never seen it until pretty much that Blu-ray came out. No, sorry, I had it in the DVD. I had a Joseph Losey box set in DVD, and then I upgraded it. So I've probably seen it about 5 times in like the last 12, 18 months or something like that. And it stands up. I didn't even mention the kind of subplot with John Moreau and resistance fighters that Delon kind of gets caught up in. It's just a wonderful film. 2 wonderful releases. But again, in this boutique label battle, there has to be a winner. And I would give the nod slightly to the Criterion just for those couple of extra supplements. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know what version of Monsieur Klein you have and what you think of it. And again, hopefully I will be getting to Joseph Losey at some point, because I do think he's a fascinating director. As I said, he was talking about the 3 aspects of the film that he wanted to get across. And it's interesting because there's essentially 3 Joseph Loseys. There's the US Joseph Losey pre-blacklisting, the films, the English Joseph Losey post-blacklisting, and then the European Joseph Losey. So thanks so much for watching. This is Soldier Owen from Soldier Owen Films, saying farewell.